YFM.
It moves me straight to my guest for this morning. He has, over the course of his life, built himself a resume that most can only dream of as a politician and a development economist. Now, he was born on March the 29th, 1951 in Kumasi in the Ashanti region. He attended the Achimota College and the University of Ghana, where he obtained his first degree. He later furthered his education at Williams College, where he graduated with a Master's of Arts degree in Development Economics. He is an economist by profession and was the managing director of the Tema Oil Refinery and the chief executive officer of the Ghana Cocoa Board. He won the Subin constituency seat for the New Patriotic Party in the Ashanti region during the 2008 general elections and served with his constituents with distinction till 2016. He also served as the managing director of Intravenous Infusions Limited prior to his appointment as High Commissioner of Ghana to the United Kingdom and Ambassador to Ireland by John Ajekunkofor. He served in that capacity from 2001 to 2006. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're locked in now, if you're in here for Why Leaderboard Series, the class, join me as we welcome Honorable Isaac Osei. He's my guest this morning on the Why Leaderboard Series. Good morning and welcome, sir, to YFM.
Yeah, good morning.
It's good to have you here, and I have to commend you for showing up very early. The interview was supposed to start at 10, but by the faith of God, by the blessings of God, we actually, had you in here early, so we definitely had to start things early. It's good to finally have you around. I haven't seen you in a while.
Well, you talk as if you know me very well.
So let me just mention this then. I grew up in Kumasi, and I attended the Kumasi Anglican Senior High School, CAS.
Yes, I know CAS.
Yes, at Amakum. Yeah. And so in 2009, a team of students were put together to represent the ICT department. Mm-hmm. And I remember when we got to the school in 2007, we had a freshly commissioned ICT lab which didn't have computers. And so in 2009, I think around December, getting into 2010, we one night heard Honorable Isaac Osei wants to visit us. And he wasn't far away from us because I think the family house was somewhere around Kumasi Anglican.
That's not untrue.
Yeah,
that is not untrue.
Yes. So around 9 p.m.-ish, just before entertainment, we were all called to the ICT lab. And lo and behold, Honorable showed up with a couple of guys. And we had computers through you.
Well, I think it was really part of my duties as a member of parliament. I learned about what was happening there, the fact that you had the structure there.
Yes, but we didn't have the computers. And it's brought a lot of joy to us because, some of us had seen computers before. We went to senior high school and we couldn't find it. We had a lab there, so it was just occupied by seats. I think it was even kept as a storeroom for the new seats that were brought in. But by your intervention, we had new sets of computers. I'm sure the school is still using them till now. They were state-of-the-art computers. I think they were Pentium 4s back then. It wasn't touch screen, it was the flat screen.
Yeah.
And so that was the first time we met you. And so the team came together and then spoke to you for about 20, 30 minutes, and then you left. And then we found out it was actually our member of parliament. And so we're like, okay, all right, this man is... And so from then, I've kept close tabs on you when you went to Cocoa Board, the time you were with, what's the name? After Cocoa Board, and then Tema Oil Refinery. Anytime I hear Honorable Isaac Osei, I'm like, okay, you guys don't really know him. I know him personally. So, we never got the opportunity to say a big thank you to you. Through you, some of us know computers.
The school thanked you.
The school thanked you.
I think that's really enough. And I'm happy to see you here.
Yes.
It means you've progressed.
Now, by God's grace, I can control computers. Like, I really know my way around. Good to have you around, sir. So, let's dive down into your life. We know Honorable Isaac Osei as the MP, the CEO, former CEO of Cocoa Board, but people really know who you really are. For the sake of Why Leaderboard Series and all the people who are locked in this morning for inspiration, are the ones waiting to be motivated. Where were you born and how was growing up like for you?
Well, I was born in Kumasi, in Asante New Town.
Okay.
Which in the early days was the hotbed of political activity. My home was in Theocaris Lodge, which is just behind the CPP office in those days. And there was a lot of activity, political activity, some a bit violent in those days on the streets.
Yes.
The street which we call Odumasi Street.
Yes.
That's the street from Alaba, all the way to Wesley College.
Yes.
So we saw a bit of that, but we were very young and we probably did not understand what was happening in those days. But I enjoyed my life as a young boy in Kumasi, walking to school from Asante New Town all the way to the state primary school division. Maybe it's about a couple of miles or a little bit. I walked with my brother and some of my classmates, Maxwell Kofi Juma, for example. We started class 1 in 1957 when we were 6 years old.
Yes.
So we started in the Gold Coast. But very soon we were in Ghana, because a couple of months later we were in Ghana. But it was a happy period, I enjoyed it, P. Wood, Eduartha was also one of my classmates, and we lived in the same house, so we would all walk together and go to school.
Was it State Experimental School?
No. State Experimental School did not exist at that time.
At that time.
It was State Primary School and State Middle Boys School.
Okay.
And it was opposite Bantama, LA.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the only school at that time which had a canteen.
Okay.
So for 2.5 pence in those days, you could have a decent
meal. Wow.
And it was a good. And Master Arthur, a famous head teacher, Master Arthur, was the one who was in charge of the school at that time.
So this was a young boy with his friends growing up in Ashanti New Town. That's actually Ashtown.
Yes, well, now you call it Ashtown.
Now we call it Ashtown.
In that time, we never called it Ashtown.
It was Ashanti New Town.
But I accept that it's Ashtown now. So.
And you would walk through Ashtown. Let me get it right. Go through.
When you're going there, you go through Imrum.
Imrum, yes.
You go through Imrum by Lawyer Manquetier's house, by the Chamartins.
Yes.
And then you walk straight to in front of Odeon Cinema, and then you turn left, and you are in.
You are in Bantama.
Yeah.
There were other routes, but I think those ones would be long. Going through the room and then coming down through the zoo. Did we have the zoo there by that time?
Yeah, the zoo was there.
The zoo was there.
It was the only zoo in the country at that time, and we would go there from time to time. Kumasi was a great place, and I have very fond memories of my time in Kumasi.
When Ghana got independence, you were 6 years old.
Yes, I was 6.
How was the experience like? Did you understand what was going on, what was happening back then?
But there was a big parade at the Prince of Wales Park. The Prince of Wales Park was opposite the zoo.
Okay.
It was a big park there, and some of the school children had to wear their shorts with white socks and various types of shoes and march, around. We were given this Independence Cup with Nkrumah's picture on one side and then the coat of arms on one side. I can't remember much, but there was a lot of euphoria.
Yes.
Certainly in our home, everybody was talking about independence, and some rallies were held at Subin Valley, which was very close to our home, so we could see what was happening. There's a lot. It was a hotbed of political activity.
Yes. I can only imagine. I mean, some of us were born just a few years ago, but I know how it feels like if something is happening and it's affecting the entire nation. Your father, Nana Osei Nkwantabisa, was a contractor and a well-known businessman. He was also in Kosovo back then and served in the palace of the Asante. What was it like growing up surrounded by such traditional grandeur?
Well, I didn't grow up surrounded by traditional grandeur. In those days, my father was a businessman. He was not a chief.
He had not been
My
chief.
grandfather was a chief.
Okay.
He was the Omentihne of Kumasi, and he served at that time in the palace of the Otunfo. Then Kosovo Stool was created during the 50th anniversary of the return of the Ashanti Confederacy by Otunfo Pukuwari. And my father perhaps for his services to Asanteman or to the country, he was given that stool.
Yeah.
And that stool was to be for him, his family, and his children. And one of my brothers now occupies the stool.
Okay.
But it's very significant because it was the first time that a stool had been created solely for the development of Asanteman. Subsequently, other chiefs in other areas also nominated others to become Nkoswohene. So my father was to report to for what was happening in various traditional areas of Asante. And after that, this was in 1985, I think. My brother is carrying on the tradition which was established at that time. So it wasn't traditional grandeur. You know, people would come to the house. We had then moved from Asante town and we were in Shayeso.
Okay.
So people would come to the house and sometimes come for discussions. You know, it wasn't like they were paying him obeisance as he was, as the Asante would normally be paid. You know, but he was there. It was more of a business like.
Yes, sort of like.
Yes, but he served in the palace. You know.
And so you still once in a while have opportunities.
One of the divisions of Kumasi, you know, before the Nkoswo stool, there were 10 divisions.
Yes.
And his was the 11th, which was created by Otumfuo.
And it's been kept since.
It has, you know, it's not too long ago, but, you know, a couple of decades ago.
Back.
Yes.
Wow. Tell us a bit about your education. You mentioned that you went to state
primary.
Yes, primary in Bantama. After that, where did you move to? And how challenging was life like as a people back then compared to now? I mean, how different were things? Challenging.
Well, we walked to school. It was natural. Some of us had sandals. Many of us didn't. And sometimes, if you were wearing sandals and your colleagues were not, you pack yours you take it off and walk like everybody else. You wanted to be part of what was going on. But in 1960, my father brought me to Accra. And I went to Achimota Primary School as a boarding student. So I was quite young then, but Achimota Primary School had reopened in '59 following the war. It was closed down during the war, and new students had come in, and I joined. And so many of my friends from that period still remain friends. So I was in Achimota Primary School for 3 years before going on to Achimota School itself. Yes.
How was the experience like gaining admission to Achimota School? I'm told, I've spoken to a few people. I think the last person from Achimota, no, not the last, but the first person was Auntie Joyce Ayi. You know, she spoke about how big an opportunity it was back then to gain admission to Achimota. Did it feel the same for you?
Well, it didn't, because the primary school was a department of the school, the whole Achimota school, and we were only a walking distance, and we frequented the Agri Chapel, the common room, and the swimming pool. We use these facilities, you know, because we're actually part of the Achimota setup. So ours was Achimota School primary department, and the secondary school was Achimota School secondary department. The headmaster was the same, even though we did have somebody else who was superintending the school at that time. And I fully expected to go to Achimota School, having been in the primary school.
Ideally.
And ideally, in reality, many of us who were in the primary school, certainly in my year group, managed to get into Achimota School. But Achimota School was different because people came from all over the country.
Yes.
So for people coming from far away, it was something new to them. But I will not pretend that I was so shocked because I'd been there
used to it.
For 3 years. But I remember Joyce I very, very well. I think when I was in Form 1, she was in lower 6. My senior, you know, respected citizen of our country. You know, I remember her very well. She was actually the girls' senior prefect.
Yes, she mentioned that.
We still communicate from time to time.
I get that. That's beautiful. I mean, knowing people from way back, growing up with them and still achieving a lot with them, on the national level, I definitely know how it will feel. Now, around that time, did you have a fair idea what career path you would want to chart?
We talked a lot. I had some of my mates, David Nkansa Jamna, DK Osei, who became President Kufuor's secretary, the ambassador DK Osei, of course, Pilgabra, Kwesi Korte, who was deputy president of the EU. There were many people who actually have made it. But at that time, many of us had not chosen particular paths. DK, for example, was a French scholar. So we all thought he would go into diplomacy, international relations and all that. I was more of a generalist, and I could have chosen to study science or to go into the arts. In the end, I ended up in arts and studied economics, mathematics, and English for my A-levels, from where I went to university. But once I got to the university, I was offered sociology, psychology, and economics. I had decided at that time that if I did very well in economics, I'll proceed and become an economist.
And then you did?
Well, I almost didn't, because Professor C.E. Fishin and Professor Ayuko Iboli, who were my psychology professors in the first year, were adamant that my skills were suitable for to become a psychologist, But at that time, I thought the economics would provide me a good base to get into business, I may have gone into the business school, but I chose to do economics because I felt that gave me a broader base. And subsequently, one could go into business.
I did economics too, but that was not the motivation. I mean, I was basically good at it in senior high school, and so I felt, let me just continue. Along the line, I struggled with choosing, because in Legon you'd have to drop some of the courses as you move up, and so that was a bit of a struggle for me along the line, but I ended up finishing with it, and it was good. Let's talk about, aside academics and economics, how were your days on Legon campus like? Tell us how life was like back then. What was the source of entertainment?
I enjoyed myself in Legon.
You did?
Oh, I did. I was in Commonwealth Hall.
Okay.
It was a fascinating place, and there were opportunities actually to study, but there was also opportunities to play. Those of us who came from Archmotor School, it was a mixed school.
Yes.
There were our colleagues from France Pim and Adesadal who were a bit reticent, for example, to go to Volta Hall and just sit down and chat with the girls, But eventually they got there, We understood, they were just like sisters, you could communicate with them quite easily. But Legon was very, very interesting for me. I became the national president of the Ghana UN Students Association.
Great.
In those days, that was the biggest student organization in Ghana, much bigger than the National Union of Ghana Students, because we covered the secondary schools
as well
as the universities and training colleges. So we ended up most of our weekends traveling to other parts of the country to inaugurate GUNSA branches and to make them aware of the ideals of the United Nations organization. Through that also, I did meet some important personalities because we had opportunities also to travel, and it was on the platform of the GUNSA that we had an opportunity also to display possible business skills, because in those days we used to organize charter flights to the United Kingdom, and we would take 115 students at a time, take them to London for 6 weeks, try and get them jobs whilst they were there. It was a very useful experience.
And this was funded by the UN?
This was not funded by the UN. It was funded by the students who were traveling. That was the model. The model was that Ghana Airways gave us what their cost was. It was on a wet cargo basis, which means that they provided everything and we paid for it. And then when we had made the appropriate divisions to know how much it will cost per head, and added something for administrative costs, we charged the students, and we're able to go take them in at secure visas for everybody, and then we're able to bring them back. Wow. Some of us even stayed at number 3 Collingham Gardens, which belonged to the Ghana High Commission at that time. It was a hostel for students, but it was a very interesting experience for us, because it opened our eyes to the world of business. Particularly in 1972, the Ghana Airways plane that we had taken, which was supposed to pick us up, broke down in Rome. And so we went to Ghana Airways and insisted that they should find us another plane. And they said, well, we have to go all the way to Luton. We went to Luton, and Monarch Airlines agreed to pick our passengers up. They came, picked them, and brought them back. Except that Ghana Airways were using the VC-10s, jets, and Monarch Airways was using the Bristol Britannia propeller, so it took us a longer time to get here. To get here.
But at least you got home
in those days, but that's the way it was. So we realized that, look, if you did this as a business, it may
I want to find out what inspired you to join this group in the first place. I mean, I'm sure you were just a regular student. What did you see in there that moved you to join? Of course, before you started exploring all the possibilities in business and all the things that you could have done with it or you could do with it, what moved you to join?
Well, I think it's just what the United Nations stands for. And it didn't start at Legon. It started at Achimota School, where I was also the president of GUNSA at that time. And then I became Eastern Region President in my first year at the university, and subsequently I became the national president. So it was just about the ideals of the United, to ensure that succeeding generations of humanity was saved from the scourge of war. I mean, that really is the basic ethos of the United Nations. But these days, the United Nations is much broader. They have various agencies doing so many other things.
Sounds very interesting. I mean, for students that really loved the concept of, economics, getting into student activism, that's what I think I should call it. You were so much interested in ensuring that other students thought like you and then saw the possibilities in all the things that were available. Usually, students, my mates, a lot of them were sort of like reserved. They like to just stay with their books. They'll tell you math is not easy, so they wouldn't really get involved in things that has to do with students. But I think from that time you had seen the leadership skills in you.
Well, I think it's all about the Achimota education.
Yes.
It's not just about passing your exams, but making you a complete person. So we had the Writers Club, we had debating societies, we had all kinds of things. We had sports. I think Achimota is the only place where they did maybe 10 sports: swimming, volleyball, cricket, all those things. So clearly, I think Achimota School molded many of us to think rather broadly beyond academic studies. So for me, it is not surprising. And also, economics being a science, a social science, encompasses more than figures and numbers. It encompasses what happens in the broader society.
Yes, studies human behavior.
Absolutely.
Social systems, how things happen, why things happen. So it goes broad beyond that.
So it is not it's not really restrictive. It's rather expansive in my view.
Now, you also have a master's degree in development economics from Williams College, Massachusetts. What inspired the pursuit of this degree? I mean, at this point you had amassed a lot of experience through working with students, the UN, and of course having your degree and that. You could have stopped there. What moved you to push it further, leave Ghana and then go study out there?
Well, I'd always thought that I will certainly study and go for at least a second degree. And it could have been done in Ghana. However, when I left university, that was the year, 1973. It was the year that the, the National Service Scheme was established in 1973 under the Champon regime. The National Service Scheme, under that scheme, I was picked with a number of people to go to the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning. That is where I had my first job. After national service, after the first year national service, I was employed. I was asked to stay by the ministry. And it was from that ministry, which at that time in my division was under Dr. Ari Baswa. Baswa later became MP for Kumau. And then Mrs. Chinrihesi, who was then our principal secretary. In fact, it was Mrs. Chinrihesi who arranged for me to be given a scholarship to go, and I thank her and Mr. Baswa, or Dr. Baswa, for supporting me at that time. So my education in the United States, first starting at the University of Colorado Summer School, polishing up my my maths and statistics before going on to Williams College. Williams College is one of those very old New England colleges. I think started in 1789 or thereabouts. And I was fortunate to go to Williams College. They have a system whereby they send professors every year to countries like Ghana to look out to see if there were prospective students who could go to Williams or to Harvard or one of those schools. So Professor Clark, who came to Ghana, tapped me, and Mrs. Chinrihesi arranged the support for me. So I didn't have to work a day in the United States. I just went to study. And
purposely for that.
And development economics, and came back to the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning at that time. At that time, Dr. Robert Gardner had come from the ECA, and he was in charge of economic planning. And Dr. Kwame Donkofojo was in charge of the finance ministry, even though a champion still retained the portfolio of Minister of Finance.
Wow.
So we worked under some very good people. Charles Abaka was my first boss, and then subsequently, when I was in industry, forestry, and mining, the planning was done in our office. But subsequently, I moved into macro division under Sam Daisy, with our boss being Dr. JLS Abbey. You know, and it was a learning curve for me.
Now, help us understand how important developmental economics was to you as an African back then. What did you look at achieving with your studies?
Well, I think the whole business of going to study development economics was to come back and assist in the ongoing process of development in the country through policy initiatives which could have long-lasting effects on the country. But I was not the only one. There was a cadre of people who were sent out to go to various universities in the country, in the US and UK and even in Ghana, to study, at a higher level in economics. And we were all supposed to come back. So the day I finished, I left the US, even though I could have worked there.
The day you graduated, you left the US?
I left the US. I came to Washington for a couple of days, and then I was on my way back to Ghana and back to the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning. Unfortunately or fortunately, I didn't stay there for long. Because I met one Ibele Duse, who was the managing director of Ghana Tourist Development Company. And when he saw me, he knew me before. He said, "Look, we have an interview tomorrow. We are looking for economists and for the projects department and someone with a business background for the commercial operations. So attend if you are interested." And I did. I went there and we had the interview, and I had applied to become the projects manager. But Mr. Joe Donko, the late Joe Donko, he became an MP for Tano North. Joe Donko, after I had answered a few questions, just said, "Look, Mr. Osei," he was then managing director of SIC.
And State Insurance Company.
And Ajay Bewia, who was then executive director of Ghana Tourist Control Board. Ajay Bewia, who is the immediate past ambassador to the US. He was also on the panel. And they said, look, you have the flair for business.
This is the guy we're looking for.
So why don't you go to the commercial department? And then another guy who also did very well, Kwesi Hagen, Isaac Kwesi Hagen, he would go to the projects department. And I said, well, I'm in your hands. If you want me to go into commercial, I will. So they said, you go to commercial, but how much do you want to be paid? And I said, 7,300. And then they looked at me and asked me to exit. When I went out and came back, they said, we'll give you 7,314 a year. At the ministry, I was being paid 3,200 cedis a year.
Okay, so this is current Ghana cedis?
No.
Yeah.
Old cedis.
I got confused a bit.
Yeah. When we finished national service, we were earning 100 cedis a month.
Okay.
That's what we were paid. But when I started at the ministry, it was 2,724, and then subsequently 3,200 after my master's. So they said 7,314. And I asked again whether they were joking. They said, yeah, it's true. So I came back and told Mrs. Chinrihese that I was resigning. And he said, what? I said, what's wrong with you? We have plans for you for further studies and all that. You are not resigning. And I said, madam, what they are paying me, it will take me another, I don't know how many years to get there.
To earn that.
And I had then met my wife, and I was sure she was my girl. I was sure I would marry her. And I said, madam, this thing, I will never get there. Then she said, what, 7,314? As a principal secretary, I'm being paid 7,200 after all these years, the civil service. And I said, besides, madam, they are giving me a car.
Wow.
They are giving me a house. And then she said, Osei, I still don't think it's good for her. And I told Baswa I had to leave. So I left.
Wow.
We're then at the Roundhouse, where the European Commission has its offices. At cantonments.
Cantonments.
Yeah. It was owned by one Mr. Frank Hammond, an architect who designed the place. And that was where our offices were. And it was a Beleduse who actually mentored me, coached me, explained to me what commercial processes were. Incidentally, that company, Ghana Tourist Development Company Limited, was set up by Mr. Kofi Annan, who became UN Secretary General. He was the first managing director. It was upon his exit that Abel, who was in charge of commercial operations, became managing director. And then I took over from Abel, not as a commercial director, but as a senior commercial officer. Subsequently, I was promoted, and I became the commercial manager. So a lot of my understanding, the skills that I attained that I think I have for running a business, I learned at the feet of Eduse. And I thank him wherever he is, if he's listening. Mr. Eduse, just say a big thank you to you. You have made me what I am today. Yeah.
When you look back to the moment where you had to decide on whether you're staying or you're taking the new job, do you feel proud? Well, do you think if you're to relive the moment, you'd make a different decision, you'd stay?
Well, the thing which convinced Mrs. Chinrihese was that I said the terms of my study was that I should return to Ghana and work in the public sector. And since the Ghana Tourist Development Company was owned by essentially the state organized SIC, SNIT, Ghana Tourist Board. These were the owners of Ghana. They were the shareholders. Ghana Tourist Development Company. We're running the duty-free shops. We set up the foreign exchange shop.
Yes.
Then at the trade fair, we're running the diplomatic shop. We set up Accra Travel and Tours Limited. We had the Palm Court restaurant at the beach. We ran a lot of casinos in this country, and it was all part of my remit. And then, we had to bring in in those days of shortages, we brought in a lot of alcoholic beverages so that some of the hotels could also be served. You know, and Abel gave me this big responsibility. That's why I doff my hat to him. But I don't regret leaving the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance taught me what it meant to work in a structured organization, you know, so, and that has stayed with me, you know, ever since, you know, so.
Wow. Before we move on, I just want to find out one thing again. When you went to study in the U.S., were there challenges you faced being a black student from Africa coming in to study in America? Because I read around that time there was a lot of pressure on blacks, especially the ones there. But you were from Africa. Were things different for you? Did you see anything? Did you experience anything, challenges whatsoever?
Well, I wouldn't say that I experienced direct discrimination. It was quite subtle. But at school, we were just students. You know, we felt that we were as capable as any of the students. If they could get an A, I could also get an A. You know, and we studied. Occasionally, somebody will make a remark, but you ignore it. And Williams, it's in a village called Williamstown. It's one of the very old New England colleges. You know, it's like Amherst or Wesleyan or Smith's College for girls. You know, those types of schools, they are schools which have a very long tradition. But it was in Massachusetts, you know, in the heart of New England. You would not experience direct discrimination. Of course, once we went to a club in Boston, in Boston, and they looked at us as if there were a couple of us, one from Nigeria and then myself. They looked as if we were from Mars. But for me, I didn't really experience direct discrimination. But it was always subtle, you know, the way people look at you and that sort of thing. And they ask you, where are you from? And you say, okay, I'm from Africa. Once you say you are from Africa, then they are happy to talk to you. I think they were more interested in discriminating against their own citizens, and not those of us
than the ones who were from outside.
I didn't experience that.
Okay. All right. Now let's talk about family. What has always been your idea of an ideal family? An ideal family, like an ideal family setup.
Well, first of all, you know, as an African, you come from one family, and then you marry, and then you create
your
another
own family.
But you never sever your links with your family. I have very strong links with my brothers and with my sisters, and there's not a single day that we don't talk. You know, but I also understand that I'm responsible for the children that I have brought into this world, and that even those that we are adopting are part of that family, and it's our responsibility to bring them up in such a way that they can also be on their own and create their own families. So ideally, you know, the father is the head, but for me, my family, the moral compass actually is from my wife. You know, she's been the steady rock for me. Without her, I wouldn't be where I am today. She's always tried to direct me. She's a very strong.
You still call her Madame?
I don't call her Madame. I call her Marian. You know, and love of my life. You know, so that's the way it is.
Tell us how you were able to convince Marian to settle with you. I mean, to believe in your dreams back then. Give us the flow back then.
Let me. You know, I met her at a friend's bachelor's night, and I thought she was a very lively, nice person. We talked, and I immediately expressed my interest in her. And she was a bit taken aback. And then I told her, no, I'll come and visit you. So I went. She used to live at Kanishi in the Amakuhina estates there. And I visited her, where she was a dressmaker in those days, you know, designing and sewing clothes for some of the boutiques in Accra. She had about 30 girls with her. I mean, and I was just a small boy who had come from the US and so on and so forth. Anyway, she said if I was really interested in her, I should come to her church.
Wow.
And I went to her church, and at the Holy Spirit Cathedral, and somebody was singing Eche Panis Angelorum, you know, a beautiful voice. So after that, I said, who was that singing? And somebody told me, oh, that lady there. And I went and I said, oh, but you brought me here. And I heard you sing. So if you don't mind, please come to my house and sing for me.
Sing for me. Wow.
You know, so that was the beginning of our relationship, and I've not regretted it.
Wow.
You know,
beautiful, such a beautiful story. Now they say
very hardworking woman, yes.
Wow. They say each child bears a gift from where they come from. You've been blessed with many of them. Tell us about them and level of gratitude you feel, and what impact their presence has made in your life, your children.
My children have been a blessing from God. You know, we've been very fortunate. All the children have been very well educated, both in Ghana and abroad. The first one went to Tech, studied sculpture, and came out with a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and then went to the University of St. Andrews to do a management course for creative industries, you know. Even though he can create a lot of things, you know, he was partly responsible for the creation of the Ghana at 60 cloth, for example.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, well, he was the head of the design team which did that thing. But now he's in real estate. So who am I to say? It's up to them, really.
Yes.
The second one has an MBA, and he also has he's also a lawyer. And works with Vodafone, you know, in compliance and, you know, some of those areas. And the two big girls are also barristers. And one is a prosecutor, and the other has taken time off, you know, to have her baby. And I've got 8 grandchildren.
Wow, that's beautiful.
You know? And then there's the last one is at the University of Portsmouth, and we have 4 children, 2 living with us now, whom we are adopting, because there's nobody at home.
Yeah,
everybody's away, and also there was a need. You know, I think people who have a little more can also adopt.
Exactly,
kids,
take on extra.
You know, take on a little bit, and. Look after other people's children. They may stay with you, they may go back to their parents. It doesn't really matter. In fact, my work as an MP enabled me to meet a lot of people who were deprived. Some of whom I started looking after in primary school, and fortunately a few of them are in universities now. And I'm very happy. I'm trying to, even when I'm in difficulties, I'll rather spend money on them, because I can see that they have a future. In truth, I have fewer years ahead of me than what I've spent.
Exactly.
But the young people have more years, and they can do something with their lives. You know, if something happens to me tomorrow, I'll be glad God gave me a good life. But for the children who are coming up, you know, and as many as, you know, our resources can assist in looking after them, I think we should.
That's very thoughtful. That's very, very thoughtful and beautiful. And you know.
But let me say that a lot of that, you know, because my background was a business background. A lot of that has come actually from my wife.
From your wife.
And I'm happy that we are doing this sort of thing.
Great. How supportive is your family in your endeavors? As a politician, as an economist, it sounds like you're doing a lot, even in a day. Where do they come in? Don't they have issues with you not showing up sometimes? Well,
the family, we support each other.
Okay.
You know, when I decided to run for a seat in Kumasi, my family, my wife and the kids, they were 100% behind me. Even my wider family, my brother came from the US and he stayed to ensure that, you know, I
came to join the campaign team.
Yeah, he was very critical. Nana Chipye, I'm just saying hi to you. You know, he's in Kumasi now, but fortunately, when he came, he stayed, and now he's back home. He was an economist, you know, and an IT specialist working abroad, but now he's here working in Ghana, you know. So family has been very, very supportive. You know, when everybody leaves you, your family will never leave you if you are together with your family. You know, today when I get home, you know, I know my wife will be there. She will tell me that I'm tired. She'll give me a drink. She'll give me something to eat. You know, and you can't have that
if you don't have.
Yeah, you can't have it anywhere.
That's very beautiful. Yeah. Anyways, as a father and leader, right? What is the fundamental principle on which your family thrives? And, you know, in relation to that, what foundation do you think societies should be built on? Family, society?
Well, I think, first of all, you know, the basic unit of every society is the family. If families break down, our society won't break down, you know, because nobody has a moral compass to look up to. You know, growing up, the whole process of acculturation, you know, sometimes we lose it if parental care is not there, you know. So parental care is extremely important when, and also not just care, but responsibility. You know, if you bring a child into this world, you have a responsibility to make sure that that child grows up and does something at least better than what you have done.
That's true.
You know, I'm just hoping my children will achieve far more than I have.
Yeah.
You know, and that is the children we have adopted, we are going to push them as far as we can. You know, before our maker says it's enough. So I think that the family is extremely important. But also within the family, transparency. Openness, truth, you know, should be our guiding principles. If we speak to each other very clearly, very openly, we discuss things. There's a lot of debate. When my kids were growing up, I didn't know 3 of them would become lawyers. But now they are lawyers. I dare not even...
Nah, you can't even try it.
No. You know, when I was coming, one of my daughters called me and said, I know you are always on time, but where are you? And I said, on my way to this. So we have a very beautiful relationship. You know, they are married, first 4 they are married with children, they live with their husbands, but they come home, they know it's their home, they can come in anytime, sit down, eat with us, they invite us, we go there. I mean, it's, I'm blessed, I'm very lucky.
I can see that, you're really, really blessed. Guys, we have Hon Isaac Osei in the building. Wiley the Board series is still ongoing. If you have a question for him, 020222207. I'm having a beautiful conversation with him. We're on here. And let me find out from you. If you're not doing business, if you're not going out to work things out in your political, you know, jobs, what are you doing? If you're home, what do you do during your free time? How do you cool off? Yes, that should be the right question.
Oh, I read a lot.
Okay.
And I read anything.
Okay.
Anything which comes my way, I read. I watched a lot of documentaries also on television. And then on Saturdays, I'll tune into the EPL. I support Tottenham Hotspurs, and I've always supported them since I went to England in 1962, the first time I was there. They were the champions.
Back then, yeah.
So back then, and I've always supported them. In recent times, they haven't done well. The last 3 games have been very painful. Poor
performance.
And I wonder why I immerse myself so much into Tottenham. But that's the way it is. You know.
Wow.
My children support different teams. When the local leagues were really going well,
when they were really active.
Being a Kumasi boy, it was probably Cornerstones or Asante Kotoko. And Asante Kotoko was the team to support.
Wow, such a beautiful story. I'm really enjoying every bit of this, trust me, guys. Now, we spoke a little bit about your career, you know, you moving from the finance ministry to work under tourism. From then, where would you describe, when would you say your career really shot off? Active business, what were you involved in?
I think in 1978, I set up a consulting company, Activism. It started as a marketing consultancy, and I represented quite a number of firms based in Europe. And I did fairly good business and started benefiting from my efforts in that direction.
Yeah.
But subsequently, I decided that I had to tie in what I was making there with some academic or semi-academic work. And then, so I converted with my friends, the late Victor Newman, who was the president's, one of his advisors in the
special aid,
who died recently. He joined me with B.K. Osei, an economist who runs his own construction company. Subsequently, we brought in William Yabua, and then J.D. Atifa. Atifa was in charge of the Ghana Airports company.
Yes.
And was also in charge of the NPA, National Petroleum Authority. He was our systems analyst, and we set up a consulting company, Activism Economic Consultants Limited. I think at one time we were probably the leading local consulting firm in economics and in planning.
Wow.
And we did a lot of jobs for the World Bank, for USAID. We conducted a lot of impact studies. We worked for especially the Ministry of Roads and Highways, and we developed the methodology for prioritizing investments in feeder roads, So after making some money, I decided we would do the but that also generated us a lot of income.
That's true.
Along the way, with politics emerging, Victor and his wife, God bless them, they were the people who were involved with others, Rakub Robe and to set up Radio I. Some work was done in our office during that period, and Radio I was established. Subsequently, others, politics became the thing, and Victor from our offices joined the Akufo-Addo campaign and was with Akufo-Addo until, unfortunately, he passed on.
I think the day Auntie Joyce came in, sorry to cut you, she cleared, I think before that, people actually thought it was Radio Eye.
No, Radio I.
Yes, and then she cleared that it was Radio I.
The symbol was an I.
Yes, it was an I. But I mean, back then, people thought it was Radio Eye, and so that was how they
well, in any case, Radio Eye also works.
It also worked for them.
It was the thing which opened up the space for you,
for what we are now.
And maybe they haven't received enough credit.
Enough
for what
credit.
they tried to do at that time. It was something which I was proud to be associated with. Guys like Kandapa and others were all involved.
All of them,
they were all involved in it.
Wow. Shouts going out to all of the guys watching on Facebook now. Kwame Sci-Fi, I see you, good morning, says, watching you live from Pandai. Ambassador Isaac Osei, I salute you. Harold Aite Kwe, I think he's watching from London. Bati Yaka says, wow, you got my boss in the studio today. One great mind in Ghana. He's been an inspiration to me and lots of young guys. Dede Akono says, Daddy, we are watching you. Nana Kwame says, is indeed a great man. A great man. I think that's even an understatement. Anyways, let's move on. Now, did you find politics or politics found you?
That's an interesting question. I think I recall, that before 1992, I had a discussion with the late Dr. Asante Antwi, who died recently, the Methodist priest, and he was talking about how we could instill democratic values in our country, and talked about the Dankwabuzia movement. I did not join, at that time, but once the new patriotic party came in, I joined immediately in 1992 because I believed in the liberal democratic principles. You know, I had met Dr. Buzia when I was at the university, first in my father's house, and then subsequently as at a Gunsa Congress, where I spoke against dialogue with apartheid, with apartheid South Africa. And Buzia, after we had condemned the Progress Party government roundly for its policy of engaging apartheid South Africa, Buzia said, I can understand where you are all coming from, but let me just say that there's no field of human endeavor where when you have a problem, you cannot talk with each other. So I will always choose dialogue against mere confrontation. Those were Buzia's words, and those words stuck with me. So I've been a member of the New Patriotic Party right from the inception in 1992. In fact, all those in my office were members of the party from that time, you know.
I've been told, well, I did a little bit of political science in school. I did it. I actually did. I have a combined degree in economics and political science. Okay. Through my studies, I've realized that politics is not an easy hurdle. People who usually get in, whether by chance, by might, still have to scale some hurdles. Back then, when you joined, when you decided to get into politics, what were some of the challenges you had to overcome?
Well, let me say that, you know, my first, I joined because I thought it was the right thing to do. And then secondly, I also thought that the regimes of Flight Lieutenant J.J. Rawlings at that time, initially, we thought Rawlings might be good for the country, but subsequently, after the killing of these judges, you know, I was really chilled to the bone. You know, so even though a lot of my friends were with that group, especially those in Commonwealth Hall, you know, I felt that I was under obligation to choose a liberal democratic party, and that's what happened. It's not easy, you know. When I became a member, I did not see myself as a frontline member because I was still carrying out my consulting activities. But a time came when I felt that I should do more. So I was making my little contributions to the NPP, and then we felt that there was an opportunity, you know, after first NPP boycotted the 1992 parliamentary elections, and then subsequently we came to Parliament in 1996. You know, at that time, many of us young men were supporters of Nana Akufo-Addo, you know. And in 1998, when Akufo-Addo lost his bid, we were still behind him, and President Kufuor won. President Kufuor, even though I did not support him, I think he saw something in me. And when he had won the elections, he asked me to see him in his office. I went and he said, you are going to London. And I said, I'm not going to London, I'm going to Geneva, because I was then managing director of intravenous infusions, and our principals were in Geneva. President Kufuor just called me and said, no, you're going. I don't want you to let me down. I've sent your name already for the agreement. You know, I was pleasantly surprised. So I went to London, you know, to work as Ghana's High Commissioner. So in that sense, you know, politics found me, but I was already in it. So he brought me in at what was probably the most important diplomatic job in the Ghana Foreign Service. You know, and I'm always grateful to President Kufuor for what he did, even though he knew
you did not support him.
The people who were in Kumasi knew that I was actually working for Akufo-Addo.
Wow, we'll dive a little bit deeper into your diplomatic work in the UK. But this brings me back to you growing up again. you mentioned that you grew up in Ashtown.
Yes.
If I'm not wrong, isn't that the same place former President John Ajay Kufuor also grew up?
Yeah,
Isn't
but
he
they were
born there?
they were on the
On
other
the other
side.
side.
They were on the other side.
They were at the
in fact,
Apejafi area.
All those people, Apia Menka, all of them, Apia Menka had these offices, at Apejafi.
Yes.
And so one thing about Kumasi, and you were born in Kumasi, is that every house had a number. So I was born in KO 112. If I say KO 112, people would know who your mother or grandmother or who built that house. I mean, just like that, the Kumasi people knew. I recall that I went with Edibo Biata, my good friend, who is now the owner of Tema Bonded Terminal, and also P-Wood. He and I were going to school one day, and we saw some, what do you call them? Mangoes on a tree. So we climbed the wall to pluck a few. However, the watchman caught us and brought us in. And it was the house of Mr. J. Puku, very famous Puku Lands,
yes.
that they used to call him. And he said, where do you come from? We said, we are from K112. Then he said, Mrs. Nkumsa, Bapa now you see. And then the other guy mentioned his name. He said, Chief Atakwesi Ba. He knew straight away. And he said, look, from now on, you don't have to climb the wall, but come
walking.
For me, that was an instructive lesson. That if you want something, you should ask if you don't have it. And it's always stayed with me. So we just walked in there. But many people, it was Asante Nutta was a tough area, but it was very, very lively, and you learned a lot, From my house, it was a public stand pipe which was there, and you have to go and struggle and get yours. If you are in the queue and a big boy comes there, maybe you'll be bullied, and
wow,
and so on and so forth, Up on the hill was what we call the bomber latrine. There was only one toilet in there.
It was up there.
Place. It was up there, at Ashtown.
Yes,
where the Taylor Finn had this big, and sometimes you join a queue. So you learn from all these things, and so I always tell my younger brothers that Momo dear, dadama, na me a jabba. Because I went through these things, they didn't. By that time, the woman, being a contractor, was building secondary schools all over the country and was a very successful businessman. So we had moved first to Sintreso and then, but in Ashtown,
Ashtown is a place.
Yeah,
Ashtown
it's a place.
Is all sort of lifestyles. Everything is in there. And one thing I really appreciate, it trains you and it gives you the opportunity to choose what path you want.
Yes.
No pressure. Your parents won't really push you. If you want to go out, go out. But at the end of the day, are you going to walk with?
In my place, you just can't go out. You have to come back before a certain time.
but at least the space at which, the time between you going out and coming back, you have the opportunity of seeing a lot of things, and you choose what you want to do. Because you see people, excuse my language, people turn junkies, people become businessmen, goldsmith. I think back then, around my time, it was the smith job that was the thing. Everybody wants to go into goldsmith,
Yeah, there were a few.
Yes,
there were a few goldsmiths on the Dumasi Road.
On the Dumasi Road,
all the way to Alaba. But we didn't have junkies in our time.
Back then,
a few people may roll
one or two,
some Indian hemp or something, but it was not.
It wasn't heavy drugs.
No, there were none of this stuff that we see these days.
It's all good. But do you think did politics alter your lifestyle back then, your way of life back then? Did it change anything about you?
I think politics should make you humble.
Okay.
And you see, we are. For example, if you have a position, that position is of a transient nature.
Yes.
Look, even the President of the Republic does not have permanent tenure. His time will come and he will go. Kufuor came and went. Mahama came and went. Akufo-Addo, even though he won by a huge majority, even this time around, his time will come and he will also go. You see, so you have to be humble. And know that you have been given an opportunity, and that opportunity is to serve. it's a job of service. You know, I have never been enamored with the trappings of office. You know, you have a car, you have a policeman, and that sort of thing. To me, it doesn't appeal to me. What is important is what do you add on?
The impact.
Yes, what do you add on? And then when it's time for you to go,
you go. And the next person will come.
Then somebody else will come and take your place. When I left Cocoa Board, somebody was appointed. You know, when I left, Tor, somebody was appointed. And that's the way it is.
That's the way it is.
That's the way it is. You know, if you are a minister today, tomorrow you may not be a minister. And in fact, tomorrow another political party will be in power.
Take charge, yes.
Which will not even look at you. So I think politics should make us very, very humble and grasp that opportunity to serve your people and your country. You know, and I think that's what it is.
Wow.
You know,
that's very beautiful. I mean, your opinions are very, very beautiful. I'm loving it, I have to say. How do you feel, or do you find it upsetting when the public or people tag all politicians corrupt?
Excuse me. Sorry. It's upsetting. Not all politicians are corrupt. You know, and but you know, when one corrupt politician is found out, we are all swept with the same brush. So as far as possible, institutions and systems must be in place to unearth these corrupt politicians. I gave a lecture during the 90th anniversary of Achimota School. It's called Achimota School, the Series 3. And I was the lead speaker on that one. We're talking about ethnicity.
Okay.
And I was saying that perceptions have a tendency of mimicking reality.
That's true.
So if somebody says, as for politicians, they are corrupt, it covers all politicians, even though that perception may not be true at all, you know. And I think all of us should be guided by it. But if you're a politician, as far as possible, do your work according to the governance structures that you have. Do your work according to the law, according to the rules and regulations that govern your work. And I think everything will be fine. Yeah.
What advice would you give young ones or young people who see politics as a venture to accumulate wealth?
Politics can never be a venture to accumulate wealth. The best thing is to accumulate wealth and then go and serve after that. You know, or bring your knowledge to come and assist, you know, work. It's true that some people may go into politics with a view to accumulating wealth. But that should never be your goal, because if it is, you are likely to fail. Or along the line, you are likely to get into trouble. So I would say that the service should be, you know...
the prime focus.
That should be your focus, that I'm here to serve. It is possible that in that service, you may get some rewards, you know, but to change the parameters in order to favor yourself or your associates, that one is inimical to the whole process of development and growth.
In your opinion, right, well, not in your opinion, what's that one thing, right, that you always desire to achieve as MP that eluded you, and which, I mean, you would do in all your part to achieve if given another opportunity? If you're to go back again, what's that one thing?
Well, let me say that first, I will not go back again.
It's never happening.
So, no, I've served my time as MP. Yes. I enjoyed it while it lasted. I did my best, you know, in the circumstances that I was faced with. And while I was in Parliament, I was in the opposition. But I think the people in the Subin constituency will tell you, you know, what I did. You know, they're too numerous for me to, it's not just the computers, but I'm very proud of the number of people that I was able to support in secondary schools, you know, at that time. I wish I could have done more.
Yes.
You know, but that was not to be. But I don't regret that I didn't do everything that I wanted to do. I think other people have a duty to take it up.
To take it up as well.
And my advice to my fellow politicians is that it is not everything that you can do. But if at the end of your tenure, you are able to say that I was able to do 1, 2, 3, 4, I think that should be enough. In P we say Bema baby.
I think at this point I would just take a few questions from the viewers and the listeners on Facebook in particular. Shouts going to Kwame Osei free. Messaging here from Jabba M Johnson. That would be the first one. Says watching you live from in Kwentia. No, it's in Kwantanang. I think he got it wrong. Please ask him what is the secret to become a successful MP without. How to become successful without capital. I think business-wise, how do you succeed if you don't have capital?
Well, the first thing really is for you to educate yourself, and then secondly, you have to work under somebody, learn at the feet of those who know. When I really got into business, it was under the tutelage of Mr. Ibeleduse. I've given him that credit. And you cannot, start straight away and say that I'm going to do business, unless you have a brilliant idea which you can sell, which you can package and sell to somebody to raise the capital, or for somebody to join you in a venture. It's going to be very difficult. You have to go under some tutelage, mentorship, role modeling, and you can learn, at the feet of others. Also, I think that perhaps because of the difficulties we have these days, people have not cultivated the habit of saving. If, for example, you are in a job and you want to build, if you don't save, you will never be able to build. If you don't save, right from inception, it was my idea that 10-20% of our income should be saved, and it helps because once you have that basic income, you can then borrow.
Exactly.
You can then borrow. But people spend and then overspend,
and then they go borrow.
The thing is, you cannot spend what you don't have. But when you do that, then you are in trouble.
Financial tip 101 there for you. This next question in here says, Honorable, how do you deal with criticism and disrespect from the public? Yes.
Well, a lot of it goes with the turf. Sometimes you have to be very calm and explain things people in a transparent manner for people to believe what you are saying. Sometimes people insult you for no reason at all, and we've taken it to the turf. It seems to be the life of a politician, but it need not be.
Yes.
Because the politicians are a reflection of the society too.
That's true.
You see, we are what you are. Though individually some of us may be different, generally speaking, if you say politicians are thieves, then you are talking about Ghana as a...
Yes, you gave mandate to a thief.
So people demand too much of their MPs. An MP is not responsible, for example, building roads.
Is it?
He's not. He doesn't have the resources to do that. He can only, lobby, the appropriate authorities. But if you are an MP and you go and tell I'm going to make sure that this road is built,
the roads,
you have no authority, to do that. You should tell them the truth about what you are going to do. I never went around telling people that I'm going to build this or that road, I'm going to do this or that. You can't.
So what you can do is maybe promise that you ensure that it's done, or the appropriate authorities get it done?
You see, people who, yes, that is what you should do. But you see, people must understand that once you are elected, you are no longer just MP for Subin, where I was, in the center of Kumasi. You are a member of Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. So your duty is to join your other colleagues and make the laws and pass the legislation which will enable this country to be better off. That is why it is important that MPs take part in debate, bring their own perspectives from their constituencies to the table, and then come up with some consensus on the way forward. But if you're an MP and you go to Parliament and you don't say a word, you shouldn't be there.
That means your people are fine. Your people don't have issues.
It means you're not speaking for your people. Or if you're an MP and you don't walk into a minister's office knowing very well that that hospital, which should have been completed 10 years ago, still remains, then you're not doing your work. You have
and
to
the power lies with the ministry.
You have to go and make your constituents aware that I've been to this minister, but he says that this year there's no budget for it. It is better to tell them, but next year they will put it in. That's the way to do it. But for an MP to say that I'm going to build you a house, I'm going to do, you can't. It's not your duty. Your duty is just legislation.
And so we have to blame these same politicians for raising the hopes of the people too high?
Well, some of them, yes.
Okay.
Some of them will say, oh, once I get there, but you can't. Even the minister of roads and highways, he cannot give those promises because there's always a budget.
There's always a budget.
There are limits There's very little fiscal space, even for the Minister of Finance at this time.
And so help me understand. So basically, let's say we have a minister for roads and housing, right? And he works with a budget the Ministry of Finance provides for the ministry. But what goes into putting that budget together is the needs of the people from the various constituencies. And so the MPs need to serve the issues to them and then wait on it to be reflected in the budget. But then they don't just go around and then make promises and come back and say, okay, we made this promise and you have to find space in the budget for us. Is that how the system works?
So what is the system really, in a democracy where a president is elected by direct universal adult suffrage, the president's vision is what his party will carry with them into parliament or whatever, and it is the majority which will normally I'm saying represent the views of the people. So when the president decides that these are my priorities, the Minister of Finance, in making his budget, will certainly have broad consultations
on that.
Yes, on that. And then look at the sort of fiscal space that he has to contain that budget, or whether he needs to bring in external resources to actually do this. It's not easy. Prioritization is a very difficult subject matter because for every area of the country, there's probably a different priority.
That's true.
But the national priorities are the ones which are set from the vision of the president, from the manifesto of the ruling government, and so on and so forth. But these are debated during the budget in Parliament. So all parliamentarians, are certainly during the budget process, ought to be there to be able to say that, this one, I think it's unfair, this is what you did, and so on and so forth. You haggle sometimes, and then you can get what you want.
Before we get the last question from our viewers, this one is from me as well. It's just a personal one. What happens to a member of Parliament if he refuses to go to Parliament? If he doesn't show up?
No, he doesn't deserve to be in Parliament.
Okay.
There are provisions in the standing order, standing orders of Parliament, where if you absent yourself without reason for a specific number of days, you can be sanctioned. Yeah, but his people should withdraw him. You've been elected to go there.
Yes. What's the essence if you are elected MP and you decide not to go to Parliament, or decide not to even speak in Parliament? Debate on issues.
Some people have difficulty speaking. Or thinking on their feet. But I think generally most parliamentarians are quite capable
of doing that. Yeah. All right. Final question from my viewers. This one is coming in from Dari Bawatamino, who is my senior. He was my senior prefect back in Kumasi Anglican. I think the time you came to do the donation was actually the prefect that received you. Dari Bawatamino in Tamale says, watching you live from Tamale, what 3 books did you read that changed your life, Honorable? What books? 3 books.
3 books?
Yes, that you read that changed your life. I think he heard the part where you said you really love reading. That's why he came back with us.
Yes. I think Dr. Buzier's book, Africa in Search of Democracy. It's a small book, but it's very weighty, and I commend that to anybody who's really interested. And then there's something about the principles of development economics by Henry Bruton. You know, Henry Bruton, I think, is also a very interesting. The books I've read are very serious. And then the autobiography of Bertrand Russell, I think it's worth reading.
Okay.
It's very philosophical, you know, but it's just amazing.
Great. Bawa Taminu, so there you have it, 3 books for you. Honorable just mentioned that. Make sure you go get it. Honorable, now you served in the capacity of High Commissioner to the UK and Ambassador to Ireland from 2001 to 2006. Of course, after being appointed by President J.A. Kufuor. Now, what was your reaction to the appointment? You mentioned that you didn't want to go in the beginning.
I didn't say I didn't want to go. I said I was surprised.
You were surprised,
yes.
But you had a different opportunity you had to weigh.
Well, at that time, I was managing director of Intravenous Infusions Limited, you know, and I was going to go to Geneva that evening. And so when I went to see the president, he had asked me to see him, and then he told me I was going to London. I was a bit surprised. I did go to Geneva that day, but he said, no, I'm sending you.
So you knew you had to come back and go to...
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And it was a pleasant surprise, you know, and I'm always thankful to President Kufuor. He is the same person who brought me back to Cocoa Board, you know, to come and serve as chief executive. You know what I mean?
How did you find the role and its demands? I mean,
as High Commissioner.
Yes.
Well, I think something President Kufuor told me before I went. He said, Isaac, minim say ubetimini Queen Elizabeth akonumti. Munko cheti. Nemu aya ene Ghana for no sonteti abetie. So I got the impression that he wanted me to bring the Ghanaians who lived in the UK closer to the mission and to the work of our government. So I did reach out to Ghanaians of all manner of Ghanaians. I reached out to them and I made them understand that the government of the country at that time was interested in what they were doing. And I visited them. I went to their shops. If you go to one street in Tottenham called West Green Avenue, if you don't speak Twi, you may not even be able to buy anything in a shop.
Wow.
You know, it's owned by Ghanaians. You know, all the streets, not just retail outlets. You know, some are manufacturing. You know, making bread, making bolts and nuts and things like that. And I felt it was my responsibility at that time to encourage them to do what they are doing in London, in Ghana. I invited them, some of them, home to have dinner or lunch, and impressed upon them the need for us, you know, as Ghanaians, to bring the knowledge, the experience we have acquired, the money to Ghana. And some of them did relocate. I also met Ghanaians who are working in the city. You know, today I'm very happy that, and I told them that, look, our country needs you, and you can make $1 million easier in Ghana than staying in London. Some of them were working in city. They were very highly paid people, but they are now in Ghana. I can mention Chief Kufuor, President Kufuor. He was one of those guys who were earning big money. He came to Ghana. He's doing his own work now. Michael Ansa, who is now in charge of this bauxite development, he was also working there. Tutue Jare, I mean, he was already a made person, you know. But they are now all working here. Dombo, who is with the Railway Corporation, many of them. They would come to my house, we'll sit down. Adamu Sakande, who became an MP. Amprichum Sapon, who is still an MP. You know, all these guys I spoke to and said, look, come to Ghana. This is the place. And Ajebewia, Kofi Osafo, all these guys were not. They were not paupers. Let me put it this way. They were people who were earning there. But today they are all in Ghana. It may or may not have been as a result of my interactions with them, but I definitely try to point the way to Ghanaians. I've been to places where people have told me that because of what you said.
I came back.
I've now set up a barber shop here.
Sorry.
You know, my barber was telling me the other day, another one a bakery, and so on and so forth. So I think the High Commissioner, you need to be up and about, you know. The traditional role of a diplomat representing your country at these official functions, you drink canapé, you eat canapés and drink wine. It's fine.
You have to dance with them and all that.
Yeah, it's fine. But really what you want is investment. And I did work with British government officials, you know, to increase whatever flows are coming there. We worked with CBC, the Commonwealth Business Council. I served also as chairman of the Board of Governors of the Commonwealth Secretariat, and I worked with my colleagues in the Commonwealth. You know, so for me, my tenure in the United Kingdom was successful. Those who supervised my work, first Hakman Uswajiman, and then Nana Akufo-Addo, these were the foreign ministers during my time. I'm quite sure that they can confirm that I did the work to the best of my ability. And that is all anybody can do. You work to the best of your ability.
I like that. Still on abilities, what were some of the main issues you often had to deal with concerning Ghanaians domiciled there? I mean, you talked about the fact that you had to talk to a few of them into coming back to set up here in Ghana because life would have been easier for them here. But what were some of the issues you had to deal with?
I think the other day I watched Honorable Ayoko Botwe, the foreign minister designate, at her hearing. And I thought she made the point very, very clear that she felt there was the need for a fund which would take care of destitute Ghanaians. This is a call that we made many, many years ago. Because sometimes, you know, the ambassador or staff have to dip their hands into their own pockets to assist destitute Ghanaians over there. Many of them too had issues with documentation. I think whilst we were there, we were able to work with the Irish government to regularize the documentation of a whole raft of Ghanaians, a lot of them. After I left, I don't know what has been what has happened, but we did that. And some of them who had immigration problems, even in London, you know, our staff did their best, you know, to assist them, you know.
Great. So back here in Ghana, you were Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Cocoa Board from 2006 to 2008, I think, when you returned. What would you say were your main achievements during your tenure of office?
I think the main thing was to get the industry as a whole to agree to set a target of 1 million tons. You know, we set that target in 2007. But once you set the target, then you had a responsibility to make the investments which will ensure that you get to 1 million tons. So I think it was in 3 broad areas. First were productivity enhancing schemes, increasing the rate of fertilizer application in the country. I think we did that. Secondly, it was under the CODAPEC program to ensure that diseases and pests were properly controlled. You know, whether these had to do with the swollen, not the swollen shoot disease. That was a separate problem altogether. But capsids and merits, you know, which had to be sprayed, and then also the black pod disease. Which affected many cocoa trees. So if we could minimize that, you know, which we did during that period, and I'm sure Cocoa Board is continuing a similar program. And then thirdly was to invest in trade logistic infrastructure. And God bless my predecessor at that time, Kwame Sapon. He did a lot of great work in that area. He built this Jatabu Atema, 50,000 ton warehouse there. And I completed that project, but also started the 100,000 ton capacity project at Kejebiri in the Western region, you know. And it was after my time that that project was finished. You know, so it's all right if the next person who came after me takes credit.
Yes,
but it was certainly started under me. And then we also decided that we were going to ensure that about 40% of cocoa produced in the country would be processed. It was during my time that we brought in Cargill. You know, it was during my time that Barry Caliber doubled the capacity that they had. It was also during my time that we brought in ADM cocoa to the Kumasi factory. I don't know what has happened now, but I'm sure
a lot has been improved on.
I'm sure, yes, that the present administration is doing its best, you know, to ensure.
Yeah. From your experience as, you know, head of Cocoa Board for a while, what would you describe as the biggest challenge facing the Ghana cocoa industry?
Well, I think the aging of trees.
Okay.
You see, many of our trees are very, very, very old. And then the devastation, I haven't actually looked at this, but the devastation being caused to cocoa trees by the swollen shoot disease, especially in the western part of the country, where most of our production, you know, from 60-65% comes from. You see, swollen shoot is just like AIDS. You know, there's no cure. There's no cure. You can manage it with swollen shoot. You can manage it only through a session. You know, cutting the cocoa trees down, treating the area, and then replanting.
And then replanting.
You know, so that is the challenge. But sometimes there are social and economic barriers to dealing with these things. Because the farmer would rather have a pod or two on the tree than to have you cut
the whole thing off.
Yeah, but I understand Cocoa Board is paying replanting grant and giving them, you know,
so they're giving them the opportunity to
a lot of support
to sustain themselves while we cut and then treat.
Yes, a lot of support. You see, and Cocoa Board is also paying for the suckers, which you use to provide the shade when you are replanting the cocoa. You know, you need to plant plantain suckers.
Yeah.
So that itself is an economic activity which Cocoa Board is currently paying for. Because once the plantain is up and fruiting, you can cut the plantain and you make some money from it. Meanwhile, it provides shade, which you can also even throw small ruminants, you know, in there, and you get your protein from that.
Wow, this is beautiful. And so, is the public privileged to this information? I mean,
I think so.
You don't work with them.
I think the people in Cocoa Board are professionals. I mean, they know what they are doing. So I'm sure. Yeah, they do know.
What are your views on the joint efforts of Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire to raise price floor of cocoa? And do you think it took so long to effect such a significant but necessary change?
First of all, I commend Cocoa Board for the living income differential, which they have. I commend Cocoa Board for that. It's something that we tried during our time, but at that time, Cote d'Ivoire was just coming out of a war situation, and that was not their priority. Their priority was to secure what they had first, you know, before they did anything. So I commend the team at Cocoa Board for achieving this. I think it's important to help the cocoa farmers, especially since the basic price could fall. You know, that living income differential will cushion the cocoa farmers, you know, and it will also sustain the ability of Cocoa Board to pay them increasing producer prices.
That's great. So it sounds beneficial to all of us. I mean, you've been out there for a while, but you still how often do you read about things that have to do with Cocoa Board? I mean, I'm sure you still have some interest in that.
Oh, where I see something on cocoa, I just read it.
You just read it.
You know, but it's just for my own understanding of new things happening, you know. But Since I left Cocoa Board, I have not stepped there.
You've not stepped there?
I've not stepped there because my job there was finished.
It was finished.
So it was for a new team to take over and do their job. Since I left Temao Refinery, I have not gone there. You know, I mean, because my job was finished. I had no interest in.
But do they, how does the system work? Do they once in a while come back for consultancy?
Well, anybody who has come to me to ask me about an issue in a place that I have worked before, you know, I've always freely given my advice, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Great. Now, you were appointed as managing director of the Tema Oil Refinery in January 2017 and, resigned in January 2020. While in the role, you were tasked with transforming the refinery's operations.
I think I resigned in December.
In December, yes. It was December 2020, yes. Prior to that, the operations had been dormant. With this in mind, how successful would you say you were in effecting this change?
Well, first of all, let me just correct you. The operations were not dormant.
It wasn't dormant.
They were working. But the problem we had with Temao Refinery was that no maintenance had been carried out, and 3 cycles of maintenance had been missed. So for a period of about 9 years, they hadn't done the
maintenance that
was required. So our first duty was to try and maintain the plant. Unfortunately, on the 3rd day after my arrival at Temao Refinery, we blew a furnace. The furnace, brand new furnace,
gave up.
Just boom. Fortunately, it was an implosion rather than an explosion, so it didn't affect our staff. So we had to separate it and get our engineers to work there. But I can say that once we had fixed the plant, it was now necessary for us to put through crude oil in a company which was not making money. People say that they made money in a previous era, but the truth of the matter is that there were no accounts at the time that I took over from after 2012, no audited accounts, and therefore you could not say that somebody was making money. Yeah. But we had to get KPMG, our auditors, to go through all that process. And I think the accounts are now, they finished 2018 or so. I'm sure they are doing that, probably 2019 now. So clearly, once you have that, then you have the management tools. You look at what you have and then decide to go ahead. I can say that if one looked at the accounts, audited accounts for 2015, 2016, and when I came in 2017 and 2018, you will see that there's a different picture. And these accounts are public documents which will be available to anybody who's really interested in the truth of the matter. So we did our best to minimize the losses that were there. One thing I can say for TOR is that they have very, very good engineers, but they have to be motivated to work. The difficulty we have is that there's a lot of factionalism in TOR, but I hope that the young man who is now in charge of TOR will be able to overcome that. He's an engineer. I'm sure he can handle it. And if the government gives him the support, I'm sure he will do well. He will
be able to deliver.
He will do well, because we decided that what was important for TOR was to be able to put the barrels through.
Yes.
And this is what led to this agreement with Woodfield and Vitol. Yeah. So the agreement was to ensure that for a whole year, TOR would be working non-stop. That was what the agreement was all about, And because we didn't have money, it had to be a tolling agreement where they will pay us, to process the crude oil, and then they will take the finished products either to the Ghanaian market or anywhere. So that was the deal. And they were paying us $2.5 million every parcel, which will finish in 40 days. Since I left, I don't know what has been done. But I do know that there's still some of the Woodfield crude oil there. I'm sure the new...
And this was an agreement that was done under your administration?
Yes. We signed, I signed the agreement with them, and the whole idea is that you don't have money, go through a tolling model, and at least have some money which you can use for your operations and pay your staff
maintenance and all that.
Yeah. So I wish Tor well, but where Tor will go depends first on government policy. It depends on the what the board wants to do and how management will respond to the directives of the board.
That's future of Tor. But in relation to the country, I mean the economy at large, as a development economist and in your personal opinion, what role will oil play in Ghana's emerging economy? Do you think that concerns about ecological and economic sustainability as well as our growing dependence on oil are valid? Where are we going as a country with oil? Is it a bright future for us?
Well, I think there's, when you have oil, you have resources which you did not have before. So oil can be a plus for us. But the mechanisms which are in operation, in an oil economy, are sometimes very difficult to navigate, So the country, I think, has slowly but surely been putting in place the legal frameworks, which will enable Ghana to have maximum benefits from oil. So you can, if you have oil, it opens another window. It gives us more space to do the things that we want to do. Talking about the ecological aspects, I'm sure Ghana has a plan to mitigate any environmental disaster. We also are members of the, I think, IOPC funds, which we ought to contribute in order that if there is a problem with spillage, we can have support from the IMO and so on and so forth to assist us.
To handle that.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think our own EPA monitors the operations of all these companies who are in the oil space. So
we're in good standing.
Well, I don't know about good standing, but I'm sure that if there's a problem, we should be able
to manage it. All right. And now, final thing I want to find out about oil, right? With the growing diversification of world economies and all the nuances of globalization, right? Is it always prudent for an oil producing country or economy to concentrate a lot on its efforts into refining its oil, considering rising production costs, maintenance costs like you just mentioned, as opposed to importing refined products?
Well, that is something that the country has to look at and look at the economics of it. There could be times when it is more profitable to import finished products. But I will wager that if you have already put in a lot of investment in a refinery, then you should make that refinery run. Because, not just because of the economics, but also for security reasons.
Okay.
I mean, you need to be secure in your finished products availability. You need to be secure. And that is why the Tema refinery comes in. And I would hope that the government will look at it and support the refinery to keep itself in operation. Once it's in operation, you know that your petrol and your diesel and your LPG, which Tema refinery produces, will be available. You may not be able, because of the size of the refinery, you may not be able to satisfy all the needs, But the country should also be looking at what is happening elsewhere. I mean, we all have heard about the Dangote factory where they are doing 650,000 tons. Tor, at best, will run at 45,000. So we do not have the advantage of the economies of large-scale production. But we do have the advantage of secured supplies. You know, so these are matters government will have to look into, and then decide on what trade-offs that can be made.
Honorable, if you had your way, what plans would you have in place to put the youth of this country to work productively? General.
But I think the youth of this country, sometimes it becomes a cliche when we say that the youth of this country are the future leaders. The youth of this country are already working in key sectors of the economy. You know, during the last elections, if you went to some of the regional coalition centers, I'm talking about my political party, or the National Coalition Center, you find very young people who are manning all these stations. And I'm sure with the Electoral Commission, the same thing.
The same thing.
You know, I don't know about the NDC, but I'm sure it's the young people who are driving this economy, you know, and they are driving this country through technology. And I would say that many young people should also get into politics where policies are made. You know, I have seen that in the present government and the appointments, some young people have been appointed to ministerial positions. It's because, in my view, they have shown capacity.
Yes.
You see, and others, when given the opportunity, will also be able to perform. So every opportunity should be given to young people. But young people should also be prepared to be mentored by those who have done it before, you see. And that way, because I think that considering that 61%, you know, as you said, of our people are less than 30 years old, this is a mass of people that we need in the to be engaged in economic ventures in the country, you see. The mindset has to be not one of employees, but one of entrepreneurs. That is what is going to drive this country forward. And especially in these days where cyberspace is where a lot of people are working, young people are sharper at recognizing these opportunities. They should be encouraged, you know, to do so.
Thank you so much for that advice. I mean, I'm part of the youth, so we take it in good faith. We're definitely going to keep our heels on in ensuring that we run with the country, run to, you know, the dreamland with the country's, you know, affairs. 35 minutes past 11, Y107.9 FM. Honorable, Intravenous Infusions Limited, right? It's a health. It's a medical company, right? What role is the outfit playing in the fight against COVID-19 now, with respect to its expansion and foray into production of vaccines for the country?
So first of all, Intravenous Infusions Limited is a company which has shown that it is possible in Ghana for transgenerational ownership, you know, to keep companies in operation. We've been operating since 1974. I chair the company now. You know, I used to be the MD, but I chair the company now. And the Appentins, who are the other major shareholders, you know, they are also there, but they are not in management. Neither am I or any of my people. You know, the clear separation of management and ownership, I think, is important, you know, for companies if we want them to last for a long period. So our duty as a board is to set policy, and we've been doing that, and the company has been running well. It still remains the largest company in West Africa for the production of intravenous infusions. With COVID-19, and back to your question, with COVID-19, we decided that it was so important to this country that we should have a line to produce hand sanitizers according to the World Health Organization specifications. And according to our Food and Drugs Authority specifications. So we changed one of our lines and demarcated an area where we are producing sanitizers, which we are selling all over the place, you know. And when you get a sanitizer from Intravenous, you know that you are getting the real thing, you know, because if we are able to put liquids into
your veins.
directly into your veins. Washing your hands or cleaning your hands
should be easy.
Yeah. So we're doing that. You know, we do also have a line for producing hand washing soap. You know, and we had to do it because the country needed it. You know. This does not stop us from continuing with what we are doing, you know, small volume parenterals, giving sets, doing some of the narcotics like pethidine and so forth. You know, we're still producing all these things for the country. With Noguchi, you know, they use a lot of normal saline solutions for the tests, and we supply them. You supply them with all that. You know, and we supported them, you know, certainly up to the end of last year, it was just given to them to do it. You know, so intravenous continues to play a very positive role in this country.
Does the company have the capacity of coming up with a vaccine for the country, production-wise?
The company can do practically anything in the field, but you need to make extra investments and get the right clean rooms according to FDA standards to be able to do that. It's something that we'll look at it going forward.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Finally, let's wrap up with you speaking some words of inspiration to inspire, I mean, beyond all that you've said, to inspire hope in the young people listening across the country and beyond. The ones who are listening now who don't know what to do with their lives, the ones that are at crossroads, every single young person, and even the old ones alike, people who don't know where to move to now with their lives. With all your experience, you just told us a beautiful story, you know, from where you grew up to where you are now. What words of inspiration can you drop for our listeners?
Well, that's it's an interesting question that, you know, and it's difficult to say straight off the top of my head. But I would say that if you have a goal, then state your goals quite clearly and go for it. You know, the future of our country belongs to those who prepare themselves well. Education is the basic. But after that, you have to get out there and find out what is available and be sure that you keep your eyes on your goals. Focus on your goals, and I'm quite sure that you'll make it.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, Honorable Isaac Osei. Before we let you go, my team is requesting that we get you to... Do you listen to music? What kind of songs do you like?
What kind of songs?
Yeah, do you like?
Well, I listen to all kinds of music.
Okay.
You know, but at the moment, it's Diana Hamilton is the one who rocks my mind.
Diana Hamilton does it for you. Okay, so which of her songs? There's one me I heard.
Adom.
Okay, Adom. I think that's it. My wife likes it too. The mercy of you. I don't know the words.
Whatever it is, you play Adom and I'll be happy.
Adom. There's a part that says Adom, Adom. Try and do that one for you. 41 minutes past 11. Y107.9 FM. Thank you guys so much for contributing. If you sent in a question I wasn't able to read, I'm sorry. But this has been an interesting ride. We're going to, of course, wrap up Wiley the Boat series today with a song by Auntie Diana Hamilton. It's called Adom. It's Honorable's favorite. And this one is dedicated to him, his family, his colleagues, and all his fans. What did you say?
My daughter is Adoma.
Oh, Adoma. Oh, okay, Adoma. So this one is for you, okay? Enjoy.
I don't look like what I have been through.
Congratulations, you found the one station that plays Ghana's best urban music.
YFM.
Listen to YFM 107.9 Accra, 102.5 Kumasi, and 97.9 at Takoradi.